Now it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into the biggest news stories in the spotlight right now. We've just entered 2022, and for many countries, it's been around 2 years of lockdowns, restrictions, variants, and vaccines. COVID-19 was a global pandemic that very few people, if anyone, saw coming, and a pandemic that countries continues to impact almost every facet of our daily lives.
And naturally, as we start a new year, people are asking themselves, what can you expect over the next 12 months? For more, we are joined by Ben Cowling, Chair Professor of Epidemiology at the University of Hong Kong. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
So we're just 2 years into this pandemic. 2020 was terrible. 2021, slightly better. Now in 2022, where do you think we stand, and what can we take as the main positives and potential negatives going forward?
I'm very optimistic about 2022 in the sense that I think this is going to mark the end of the pandemic at some point this year for most countries in the world. I think a lot of places still have to face an Omicron wave, but as we've seen in South Africa, in some parts of Europe, there's a lot of infections, but not necessarily a lot of severe disease. And I think once the infections have passed, once those waves have come to an end, I think a lot of countries are going to look to return to normal. The one thing I would like to watch out for, though, is changes in the virus. Again, if there's a new variant, then of course we may have to rethink. But if things stay as they are, if we can get over the Omicron waves, then I think there's a really good chance that we'll be able to say it's the end of the pandemic at some point this year.
Okay, talking about rethinking things, some experts are calling for a shake-up of the way we deal with this pandemic. Some saying that the booster shots should go up to 3, and the remainder, the 4th, 5th shots left for the most vulnerable members of society. Do you think strategies should be tweaked somewhat now, 2 years into this pandemic? And would you agree with the opinion that COVID-19 is now endemic?
Certainly, I don't think the virus is going to go away. I think the virus is going to be with us for a long time. It may change, of course, but it's not going to disappear. So I think that in the future, we may all have a chance to get more vaccine doses, 3rd dose, 4th dose, 5th dose at some point in the future. But I think now's not the time for 4th doses. I think we'll leave those for now. In Korea, I know you've got almost 40%, even more than 40% of people who have had their booster dose, which is fantastic. And I think you're in a really good position to face an upcoming Omicron wave. You've probably got a better level of immunity than most other places in the world. So I think in the future, a lot more things are going to be left up to individual decisions rather than having policies in place. For example, for travelers, maybe we won't have vaccine passports anymore.
Now, Professor, just a few days ago, the World Health Organization kind of forecast that more than half of the people in Europe will catch Omicron over the next 2 months or so. Considering Omicron is widely considered far less severe than, previous strains, will this necessarily be a bad thing?
I think it will be a bad thing, and I think that there'll be a lot of countries in Europe are going to look to flatten the curve, to slow things down. But at the same time, I don't think there's any good reason to now try to buy time, because we got vaccines available. People could choose to get vaccinated. It wouldn't make sense to me to try to stop transmission and hold it back for another 3 months or 6 months. I think Omicron waves will occur across Europe, but if they can be slowed down, if the curves can be flattened, I think it'll make a difference, because there are still plenty of unvaccinated people who are going to be particularly vulnerable to severe COVID, even with Omicron.
And finally, as we just heard from our reporter before, on Wednesday, South Korea approved use of the Novavax vaccine. Now, unlike Pfizer or Moderna, it's not an mRNA vaccine. It actually uses part of the virus to trigger an immune response. I just want to ask you, I know you're a professor, an expert, but in layman's terms, what is the difference between those 2 different types of vaccines?
Got it. So the virus has proteins which are the components of the virus, including the spike protein on the surface of the virus. And it's that spike protein which lets the virus get into our cells, infect them, and then allow it to reproduce. The spike protein is a critical component of the virus. The Novavax vaccine is a vaccine which includes lots and lots and lots of spike proteins that they've made using a special manufacturing process. So they inject you with essentially lots of spike proteins of the virus. It won't reproduce because it's not the whole virus, it's only part of it. But it's a very pure vaccine. It has very low level of side effects. It's really a great idea. In contrast, the Pfizer vaccine, the mRNA vaccines, you get inject into our body the recipe to make spike proteins, which is like one additional step. So then we end up inside our cells making spike proteins, which then our body can react to. So the Novavax vaccine is like taking one step out of that vaccine. And the way that it's made, it's a really clever design. It's a very pure vaccine. So I think it's fantastic that you have that vaccine available in Korea now.
And just one more thing before I let you go then. Do you have a preference between the two, the mRNA or the Novavax?
Well, for myself, if I could get Novavax, I think I would actually choose the Novavax vaccine because it's going to have a very similar level of effect to the mRNA vaccines. In terms of the immune concept, it's very, very similar. But because of the way it's made, it's a purer vaccine, it will have less side effects, less immediate reactions, less fever, less achy arm, and also maybe in the rarer cases, less occurrence of more serious side effects. So I think it's a fantastic vaccine.
All right, Professor, thank you so much, as always, for your insights. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.